President Bola Tinubu is advocating for strengthening cross-sectoral collaboration between Nigeria and the European Union with a focus on shared democratic values and economic growth. Tinubu's call comes after a meeting with a delegation from the EU led by Ms. Jota Opilenen, EU Commissioner for International Partnerships. The president underlined the significance of democracy, describing it as a challenging but vital process that requires relentless effort. The president praised 8 new financing agreements between Nigeria and the EU under the EU Global Gateway in Nigeria. He highlighted economic collaboration in digital education, energy, and broadband, aligning with ongoing poverty reduction reforms.
Nigeria is a very important partner for us already, but we want to strengthen these partnerships. We have Global Gateway investment strategy, through which we want to accelerate green and digital transitions in Nigeria. So we want to support you really to have more investment for the energy sector, especially the renewable energy projects, as well as we want to support you in your digital connectivity, as well as your education system. So we are bringing our European companies to invest in this country, and today I was able to sign an agreement with the government of government of Nigeria, worth of almost 1 billion euros, over 900 million euros.
They did inform him that under the Global Gateway, there's about euro $300 billion that is available for investments, and 150 billion euro is earmarked for Africa. And both in his role as Nigeria's president and ECOWAS chairman, he assured them that we'll partner to engage and to promote investment, that is the quickest way to ensure that democracy and freedom are enthroned.
Right, more money for Nigeria, this time through Global Gateway, EU financing, or perhaps EU partnership with Nigeria. Okay.
Well, it sounds very interesting. If we're using money for development, it's good news. It's good news. But if we're using money to help, to back, or to buffer floating, I would not support. But in terms of development, what I have read with regards to this particular thing that is signed, this agreement that is signed, is about 29 million euros, it says, for climate smart agriculture. I have family in the area of agriculture. Climate smart agriculture. How far will 29 million go? It will go a long way, and it will help farmers. And I don't know whether this money is going to be given out by the federal government to help farmers in the area of climate smart agriculture. And then the one that really excites me, because I spent quite a bit of my early years in the northern part of Nigeria, and I still have friends and family in the northern part of Nigeria. So when they said there's going to be about 5.4 million euro that will go in the area of education for the Northwest. We all know the issue of Almajiri and how terrible that is at the moment, and how we're creating the next generation of criminals by not educating those young people, because poverty leads to criminality in a number of cases. We know the link between poverty and criminality. When people are hungry, they find every which way possible. So it is good that some amount of money will go to helping the Northwest in the area of education. We have to put something into that area. I know that President Jonathan did try in his time with Almajiri schools. I don't know what has happened to those institutions in the Northwest. I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has to invest more in that area, because it's not just going to stay in that part of the country. You will see them begin to move into the other parts of the country when they have nothing. That's why you see a lot of kids on the streets of Lekki, on the streets of Lagos, and other parts of the country. These are kids that don't have anything else to do because their parents have them and they don't have any job either. So that level of poverty has to be sorted. Education, I believe, is the solution. I read there that there's also some amount of money to sustainable energy. That would be good. So a number of things that is being done with this, I would say definitely it's a good idea. The government is on the right track on this one in terms of getting this. I just hope that that money will be used for what it was acquired.
Thanks, Kay.
So I just hope how receptive this government is of the EU funding and agreements is also how they are receptive of the EU election reports. Because it's obvious now, we can collect money from the EU. We want all these partnerships. But when the same EU say the observers churn out an election report, we shout blue murder. That's one for the hypocrites out there. Secondly, I'm very happy about all of this, but I am not also happy. We keep saying we want to be a great nation. When are we going to develop ourselves within? We can't continue to play this game of aid and injection support by our big brothers called the EU. Africa must be thinking of trade options, value-added good options, not the EU and its subventions and, all of that. But some of the investment, I'll confess, they are trade-based. Take, for instance, the EMSA pharmaceutical deal. They're raising money, about $14 million, to be able to build a new factory where they will build pharmaceutical ingredients and all that. That's a good one because that money definitely is not free. It's going to be paid back over time. So that's a trade part of it. But the other giftings in the terms of education and all of that, we too should be able to develop our things within here, because if the EU did not develop themselves and make these monies available to be able to cater to other parts of the world, then we'll not get anywhere. Nigeria at some point too used to give a lot of these aids to other countries. We know how much in US dollars Nigeria gave to countries like Zimbabwe and their part independence, even South Africa. Even most of the, the eventual leaders in South Africa all lived in Nigeria. Yes, Thabo Mbeki lived in Nigeria. A lot of them lived in Nigeria. So we want Nigeria to go back to that country where Nigeria is at the center point and can do a whole lot for other, countries. But for the parts that have to do with investments, trade, good. Pharmaceutical part, good. Also for the other parts that has to do with, education, transport, and other sectors, climate-based agriculture and all of that, good. But we need to also look inwards and see how we can develop our own private local capital. Because you see, most of the monies that can turn around this country, our own local private capitals, are wasting away in various septic tanks of politicians. And the monies are stored and saved there. And some of them have even forgotten that they kept those monies there. Bring those monies out and push them into this economy. I'm not condoning theft too, don't get me wrong. But please, it is better that the money is plowed back into the economy than you just allow it waste because of your greed and your thefts. And we've had too many of those cases. Do you know how much has been stolen on crude oil theft?
All right. Well, the Global Gateway Program by the European Commission was launched to meet the infrastructure gap between, especially for developing nations and partners around the world. This program is supposed to be from 2021 to 2027, and this is part of the EU's response to meeting that infrastructural gap between, in Nigeria. And so, as you've highlighted, Kay and Rufai, there are a number of areas that have been earmarked for this funding. It's meant to be a total funding, I must say, dip on 900 million euros is the amount of money, over 700 billion naira, which would be invested in very specific sectors. We've talked about renewable energy. Also, they're also going to be tackling access to finance for women in particular, looking at the North in terms of education. There's also an amount earmarked for disarmament, security in terms of terrorists and bandits in the North, and to find how to get them back into society, how to rehabilitate them in such a way that they're able to function in society. Also, we look at agriculture. So this provides a great opportunity for the Nigerian government to use these funds to do, in terms of the development of the nation. And what is often said, and EU funding is very strict in terms of their monitoring, evaluation, how money is spent, and ensuring that the money is used for exactly what it was released for. And so perhaps this is an opportunity to call on players in those sectors to see opportunities. Already you've highlighted that EMZO is going to be one of the beneficiaries, especially access to health and the tackling of malaria. It's often said that if malaria were a disease in the West, it would have definitely been obliterated by now, because a lot of work would have been done in the area of research and tackling the disease. So it's great to see this happen. What we want to see is this materialize into better prospects for the Nigerian people. So it's a great partnership. We're looking forward to the development that this will bring bring to the Nigerian nation, and also strengthening the ties and relationships between Nigeria and the EU. We'll move on to our next story. The Supreme Court has fixed Monday, October 23, to hear the petition of PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and Labour Party candidate Peter Obi challenging the electoral victory of President Bola Tinubu. This is contained in a notice of hearing sent to the parties. The PDP candidate on September 19 filed 35 grounds for challenging the verdict of the Presidential Election Petitions Court, which upheld Tinubu's victory. The 5-member panel, headed by Justice Hassan Samani, on September 6 dismissed the petitions filed by Atiku and his Labour Party counterpart, Peter Obi, for lack of merit. The former vice president had also applied to the Supreme Court to file fresh evidence obtained from the Chicago State University against the president, insisting that Tinubu's certificate submitted to INEC is forged and he is therefore not qualified to contest the presidential election. Well, Kay, we have a date and it's about to go down, if I use the words, on the street. Your take on this?
Well, it's about to go down. The issues are clear. They have gone through the entire process from the starting point, which is the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. It's being heard. A decision has been taken by that at that level, and now it's gone through appeal process and it's gone to the Supreme Court. It's now at the Supreme Court. There's not much we can say other than looking at the fact that the issues have been tabled again and again and again. Every Nigerian should be staring straight in the eyes of the judiciary and saying, please do good, and that's what our expectation should be. Asking them to do that which is right for the nation and making the decision not on technical ground or any other ground, but let's follow what the law says. Let's know that there are issues that must not be ignored. The presentation of the facts before the court should be that which is used to take the decision that the Supreme Court will take. At this point in time, we can't comment because we don't want to contravene the law. We don't want to be in contempt of court. So there's not much we can say other than make an appeal, a passionate appeal to the Supreme Court judges. Let it be said that it will go down in the history of this nation that the members of the judiciary at the level of Supreme Court took a decision that is ground-shaking, earth-shattering, shaking tables, and letting people know that the grounds for those decisions are very clear. As much time as was invested by the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, as much time as they presented all their facts and all that, people criticized it, I would expect the Supreme Court to spend time to explain their decision as well so that Nigerians understand that this is the right decision taking the nation forward. Rufai.
I mean, truth has to be told. All of the arguments and all of the depositions are already filed in. The new evidence that have been filed in. The other day, Atiku Abubakar was arguing in favor of those new evidence that the Supreme Court should be able to take a look at them. Peter Obi has filed this on over 50 grounds, I think 51 grounds. Atiku Abubakar on 35 grounds. And it's still bordered around the last judgment. And also APM, also did make another filing at the Supreme Court. They went on to the Supreme Court. A lot of people thought that after the appellate court they were done, but APM still made a big feature. So it's about these 3 cases that will be determined. And that the Supreme Court pretty much starts their process on Monday. So let's say a pause that we can only wait for them and let justice prevail. But also another issue I'd like to talk, somebody raised on the House yesterday of Representatives, the fact that The judges are overburdened in the Supreme Court, and we need more judges, to be able to come on the bench. So the earlier the government does that, make the nominations for those judges on the Supreme Court, the better it is for us as a country. So let's do that. Let's get our judiciary system up and running once again with the appropriate number of judges and make the right reforms. Put the major capital injection needed, in the process of our judiciary to make our judiciary a whole lot better and probably digital. And let's see how this pans out. But one thing is certain: either way, the court rules, Nigeria will remain the same, and we'll continue to talk about the peace and furtherance of Nigeria. And most importantly, public discourse will never end and will never cease, no matter how much anybody tried to cower the public discourse space. It is very important, the court of public opinion. And I know why I'm saying that.
Yes, absolutely. If I was Patrick Omo from Ikot Epana who had moved that motion in the House of Reps yesterday. And according to the Constitution, the Supreme Court can have up to 21 justices. However, currently, following the retirement of Justice Amina Oge, they are now at 11. And during her valedictory speech, she had actually talked about the heavy workload of the justices and actually called for a constitutional amendment to the kind of cases that are brought to the Supreme Court, and the fact that they are overburdened, also saying that they don't have the numbers, as it were. And so in our All Eyes on the Judiciary, perhaps it's also to present the other side, to say that whilst we want and we do demand justice in every sense, we should also, in the same vein, call for attention to ensure the welfare of our judges. The other day, we're talking about the judge, the magistrate judge who was on the local Okada to get to work. So when you look at things like this, we need to also advocate for our judges. Now, moving on to the case, on Monday, what would be heard, as a number of people have wondered, would be former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's motion for the Supreme Court to admit fresh evidence in his appeal, with regards to the presidential elections of 2023. So they would rule on that, and then it would determine if indeed there is enough merit to admit fresh evidence in this particular case. We continue to watch. The grand finale, as has been termed, begins on Monday, and all eyes on the judiciary, all eyes on the parties involved, all eyes on justice.